Hello everyone and welcome back to Dead Island, and today we're going to be doing a rather more interesting video. I say that, it's a rather different video compared to what I've normally been doing on this channel in terms of Dead Island, and that's because today we're going to be taking I say in-depth look, we're going to be taking a look at the electrical system of the city of Moresby in Dead Island. And if you're thinking that sounds very Annie Austin coded, that's because it is very Annie Austin coded. In one of his more recent videos at the time of recording this, he said that he hasn't really seen anyone make any of these videos, and I thought, you know what, I'll give it a go. And I thought, Dead Island is what I work with, so why not do it on Dead Island and do it on the city of Moresby? And what I found was terrifying, to say the least. We've got telephone poles which lead to nothing. We have telephone poles on their own. We have got light posts connected by wires wrapped around their middle and nothing else. We have wires going off into absolute nothingness. We have wires going into quite literal living trees. All that and more is what we're going to be seeing and terrified at in this video today. But first of all though, we need to talk about the city of Moresby. The city of Moresby, if you don't know, is located on the island of Bannoy, and Bannoy is part of a volcanic island chain which is located just off the coast of Papua New Guinea. Which means we can make the fair assumption that Bannoy will follow a similar electrical system to Papua New Guinea. It could alternatively follow a Australian or British style of electrical system, considering it was a colony of the British and then handed over to Australia before becoming independent. However, we're just going to go off of the assumption that since it is so close to Papua New Guinea, that it will also follow Papua New Guinea's electrical system for the roads, or for the cities I should say. And that means we're going to need to talk about the electrical system itself, or rather the main components of an electrical system, in order to get some background information here before we can delve right into the actual electrical system placed around the map. So, providing I can find a good diagram to use here, the basics of an electrical system is that it goes from a power plant of some description, which could be renewable, such as wind or solar, or could be nuclear, or it could be fossil fuels like coal or gas or oil. It then goes into a transmission substation of some description before going onto the high voltage power lines and through the high voltage towers, which you often see dotted around the countryside, which are usually sort of big metal girder-like structures. It transports it away from the power plant towards a substation, which is either inside of the city or just outside of the city somewhere, where it will be stepped down into a lower voltage to be used in residential buildings, or in factories, or wherever this power may be going, which here in England it comes down to 230 volts. However, other places have different voltages, but either way it's a lot smaller of a voltage compared to what high voltage lines take. From there it's taken from the transformer onto utility poles of some description. I call them telegraph poles because that's what I refer to them here in England. However, they also have, utility poles, power poles, however you want to describe them. Just know that if I am saying something like transmission lines or something along those lines, just know that I am meaning utility poles. And from there it gets taken by these transmission lines, and it then gets taken directly into your home via a wire. And that is the basics of how electricity goes from your power plant to your home. So now, before we get into this, I just need to explain, or at least show a picture of, how a telegraph pole works. So typically a telegraph pole is made out of some sort of wood because it's easy to get hold of and easy to replace, and Typically there is a cross arm, at least one, they could be multiple, and on these they have got an insulator. Essentially, it could be called a different name, could be called a standoff of some description, but I will refer to it as a insulator. And into this insulator, the wire goes into typically one wire per insulator, and from there it is taken across the telegraph pole through another insulator, possibly, before being taken along the chain until it reaches a home. And in order to get it into that home, it goes into another insulator. On the pole, there could be some sort of transformer, and this transformer basically helps to regulate the voltage and can also change the voltage, I believe. There's also a neutral wire which helps just keep the pole grounded and keep it up. There's also guide wires which also keep it from falling over. And hopefully anything else that you might want to know will be in the picture that I put up here. So, with all that in mind, we're going to have a look at, well, I was unable to find any particularly good pictures of Papua New Guinea's telegraph poles. The best I could find was this picture from Google Images, which shows basically what we're looking at. We're looking at the main pole with the crossarm and an individual wire going into an insulator before continuing down to another pole and continuing all the way down until it reaches its destination, where it will then split off into the various wires going into homes or businesses or wherever it's going into. So with that, we're going to get into it. And I'm going to take us directly into the road in front of the church for us to look at a couple of our first oddities, shall we say, before we get into this properly. So what we can see here, we have got a telegraph pole right here on this side of the road. We also have got two street lamps here, and as you can see, we've got some wires looking interesting. And at first glance, this telegraph pole looks perfectly fine enough for a game from 2011. We have got the main pole here, we have got the crossbeam, and we have got 4 insulators running along the top of it. Unfortunately for us, that is where this good part of it ends, because as you can see, the wire is actually going into the crossbeam underneath, and as you can see, there are 3 wires going across the road. Now, these 3 wires should really be separated and going into each one of these insulators at the top. Unfortunately, it doesn't. It terminates into a single point, which is into the wood. I will not point this out again, because every single wire in Moresby is like this. It is a collection of 3 wires going from point to point. So I won't keep on pointing this out every single time. Just know that whenever we see one of these bundle of wires, it always terminates at one end and terminates at the other end, with all 3 wires going into the single end point. This wire is actually running over to the street lamp. Unfortunately, it's not running correctly into the street lamp. Typically, street lamps have got an underground connection running into them and wires running up to the top to the light bulb at the top of the light. Unfortunately for us, it appears that the wire is just running straight across and going straight into the raw metal, which is not best practice. There's also this jumble of wires just around the telegraph pole itself, which should not be there, but they've decided that it needs to be. There's also this wrap of wires around this, around each of these street lamps, and they're connected by another bundle of 3 wires. This is a common occurrence in Moresby, so I won't keep pointing it out. However, in order for us to keep track of these things, we will go ahead and mark them on a map of Moresby. And I will bring up the section in front of the church here, and you will see where these things are marked on the map. And indeed, just further down the road here, we can find another one of those 2 street lamps connected by this wire running across their centre, which is not correct practice. And once again, I will not keep pointing this out as we go, but I will direct us as to where we are going. We are going to head down this road to an area known as Victory Hill, and I will bring up at this point this annotated map of Moresby with all of the different sections of Moresby mapped out that I did for the wiki some years ago now. It's probably 4 or 5 years ago now that I actually made this map, but I digress. Here is where we are going. We are going up to Victory Hill, where I will point out this area right here, as well as another type of electrical oddity that Moresby has going on. They have got these brackets mounted on the walls, which I will henceforth refer to as E brackets, because they look a bit like a capital E when viewed from this side, so I will refer to them as E brackets. These are essentially 3 horizontal wooden planks which have got insulators on them, and as you can see, technically 10 wires should run into these E brackets, and these E brackets are mostly mounted on the sides of buildings in order to help run electrical wires in areas where a telegraph pole, which there isn't one nearby for me to look at here, but for areas where a telegraph pole is not going to work. It's also useful for running electrical wires around the sides of buildings, which is what these are meant to do. Unfortunately for us, these tend to not link to anything. As you can see right here, there is in fact no wire running between the two of them, which means that this wire does not in fact go anywhere, and these are serving absolutely no purpose whatsoever, apart from apparently bogging down my game there. Yeah, these do not actually connect onto anything. And right next door, we can find something even stranger. And that is this wire right here. Not this one, which links together to street lamps. No. We're looking at this wire here. In fact, it's a bundle of 6 wires. And where do these wires go? Well, they run directly into this palm tree. No, you're not looking at this incorrectly, and no, you didn't hear me wrong either. These wires are routed directly into this palm tree in the middle of these 2 buildings. There has been absolutely no attempt to try and get these wires to connect to either of these buildings, nor to even make it link up to anything, because as you can see, it just sort of terminates in the air. Which means that this, on our map here, as we bring up this area, you can see the E brackets, and you can see that this rectangle of green, which I'm marking as the tree by the way, the big rectangle, the big brown rectangle is the telegraph poles, and the big grey rectangles are street lights, and obviously the lines are wires, which means that we can mark this on our map as being a tree connected to nothing via a wire, which is serving absolutely no purpose whatsoever for Moresby. Sticking with Victory Hill, because this is a very good area for me to point these things out, is that you will notice a lot of areas as we go through here, the wires tend to not connect up to anything. They tend to be fully enclosed systems, which doesn't work, because the wires need to be a constant running connection in order to connect to some sort of substation or directly to a power plant, which is what they shouldn't. They should really connect to a substation, but in this case most of these don't. In fact, none of these do, spoilers, but they should be making one big loop all the way around the city with all of these wires connected into things. However, unfortunately they're not, and a lot of these wires also don't make much sense. As you can see, this wire runs directly into this shack. A lot of these I am marking down as connecting actually into these wall-mounted lights, which you can find around a lot of Moresby. In this case, this wire I'm saying connects to this lamp, and really this wire, if it is connecting into this light, should really connect into one of these insulators on the top of this telegraph pole. Unfortunately, that's not what the developers decided to do. Instead, they decided that halfway down the telegraph pole is the perfect mounting point for this set of wires. And so these wires connect straight up into the middle of this telegraph pole before running over here and connecting to this building directly to power it, supposedly. As for the top of this telegraph pole, as you can see, only 2 of these insulators are in use for these triple sets of wires, and these all run into this E bracket attached to the side of this building, which is where they terminate. These wires do not even attempt to go into any of the surrounding buildings, nor continue down to this E-bracket, which leads more into the residential back end of Victory Hill. No, instead these wires just terminate here, which is something that we will see a lot of as we go around Moresby. However, in order to point out all of these different things would take a long time, and this video would be very long, which I am trying to avoid. So I will point out the more interesting aspects of Moresby before giving more of an overview. However, we can mark down this somewhat busy area on the map here, right here in the middle of Victory Hill. We are going to take our leave of Victory Hill here, and we are going to run down this road towards what is known as Langar Road, which is this main road leading down from Victory Hill all the way through the Market District and into Shantytown at the very end there. And we're going to run from this end to that end just to show all of the various horrible calamities that is going on with the electrical system just down this main road. First of all, we have got this telegraph pole outside of Simon's Hub, which is also known as the warehouse. Initially, it looks to be very busy, and it's looking a lot better than a lot of the telegraph poles we have already looked at. Unfortunately, it doesn't quite stay that way, because this telegraph pole is mounting two sets of those E-brackets on it to act as the side postings where the insulators are, which means that we have got a total of 20 insulators to work with here. Not all of them, unfortunately, are being utilised. This bottom set of insulators is leading into this metal shack out the front of Simon's Hub. This second set of wires from the middle rung is leading into this very interesting double wall mounted light happening on this corner of the warehouse. This third set of wires is running directly into the roof of the warehouse, which means that we can charitably say that it is powering the warehouse, this light, and this metal shack. A fourth set of wires runs into this building on the opposite corner, and unfortunately that's where it sort of ends. This telegraph pole does not connect to anything around it. In fact, there is no other telegraph pole for it to connect to in this area, which is rather unfortunate because it was doing so well. As we run down Langar Road, you will notice as we go through here, and I won't keep on pointing it out, that there are a lot of these wires which simply run from building to building. None of these are properly insulated. There is in fact no insulator on any of these wires as they connect into buildings, as you may have already seen. And these wires, well, they do not connect to anything. They're just running from building to building, which is highly unusual, I would say, if not best practice. So yeah, there's a lot of these wires which just string from building to building. There's one up here, there's one that we had a look at here, and running down Langar Road here we can see a lot of these wires down this initial section at least are just running from building to building. This one at least is running into an E-bracket. There are in fact E-brackets right here as well which run down this alleyway. None of these have got any wires on them whatsoever. There is also no wires on the floor. That is not a wire on the floor, if you're wondering. That has fallen down. That is just the two textures for the pavement or sidewalk, which are just sort of meshed together. So yeah, at least this wire does run into an E-bracket from this building. Unfortunately, this E-bracket does not then connect to anything else. It just sort of terminates, which is a common theme with these E-brackets. And as we run here into this into this cross junction rather, at the main outdoor market area of the market district, we can find another E-bracket. This one connects to this building, but most interestingly, it connects directly into this traffic light, which is constantly flashing amber because this is a zombie game. So of course all of the traffic lights are going to be broken. But yeah, this wire runs directly into this traffic light, and it is the only instance of this, not only in the market district on this cross junction, but in fact in the entirety of Moresby. This is the only time we see a wire run directly into a traffic light. As to why that is, we're not exactly too sure, and I'm not exactly sure why they decided to only have this bit happen. As for the main market area, we have got another telegraph pole, and this one is even busier than the one that we saw in front of the warehouse. And it's probably one of the better examples of electrification being done properly here. Because, well, there's an outdoor light here, which is being directly connected up to this telegraph pole. This telegraph pole runs over to this central one, and all of these wires connect directly to one of these outdoor lamps, which means that basically every single lamp that is on these metal shack coverings of the market area here are actually connected to some sort of main telegraph pole, and all of these connect to one of these E-brackets mounted on the main post here. And finally, this wire connects all the way over. Well, it connects directly into the middle of a street lamp, which is, not how it's meant to go, but hey, it does. This street lamp then acts as another joint connection over to this telegraph pole, which it is at least going into an insulator, and all 4 insulators are actually being used here by wires, which is quite impressive for this game at least. And these wires all connect into this telegraph pole, which then connects into this building, that building, directly over to that half of this building, and it runs over here to an E-bracket, which is where it terminates, as is normal here for these sorts of E-bracket connections. And it was going so well. And on the map it looks kind of like this, and it does look rather interesting. But we will see the entirety of Langar Road in due time as I make my way further down past the crashed bus, and we can once again see what looks to be an attempt at making a terminal properly happen on a house. Unfortunately, that is not the case. This is just an E-bracket which has been clipped too far into the building. So, there was an attempt. There is another telegraph pole here. Unfortunately, there is no telegraph pole stretching down this away towards the main market square area, and instead these wires just sort of run everywhere. That one runs into that house, and this wire just connects directly over to this E-bracket that we've seen, which runs directly into the middle of this street lamp. And right at the end of Langar Road here, we have once again got yet more street lamps connected together in the midsections by these coils of wire wrapped around the centre of them. And this is just a collection of 3 street lamps which have got that exact same problem. So here's the entirety then of Langar Road on the map, completely mapped out. You will see that there is a lot of wires connecting buildings together with nothing else. There is also street lamps connecting only to each other, and there's also that one random wire connecting directly into one of the 3 or 4 traffic lights in that cross junction. So Langar Road is a bit of a mess, to say the least. But Langar Road is but one part of Moresby, because we are now here at the waterfront district, where we will have a look at the waterfront itself, where we can find these wall-mounted lights here stretched across the actual waterline itself. In front of these piers we have got one light connected up to another light right here, connected to another light, connected to a telegraph pole, which terminates here. There is in fact no more wiring leading anywhere that indicates that it might have further connection. There is also a coil of wire wrapped around the midsection of the telegraph pole, which is also where another one of these wall-mounted lights is found, and this connects directly into another wall-mounted light, which is where this line then terminates. So we've got a nice little collection of lights here that are all connected to each other, but not actually connected to any sort of wider electrical grid. Things are not looking up as we come over here towards where a gang of punks is typically found, at the far corner of Shantytown, where we can find another telegraph pole here which actually loops onto itself. As you can see, it is actually connected to another telegraph pole along the top, which is actually connected into an insulator. It connects to this telegraph pole, which actually then leads off into, oh, would you look at that, absolutely nothing. This is free floating, it's not even attached to a tree, doesn't even have the good decency to do that. So yeah, this is just a floating wire connecting to this, and there's also a jumble of wires around the midsection of the telegraph pole, which actually loops up onto the main crossbar, which then leads straight back into the telegraph pole. So this is an interesting feedback loop going on here, and things are not any better here at this cross junction. We have got once again another horrible mess of wires, which connects over here to an E bracket, which connects up to this street light, and it sort of terminates here. If we head back to this street lamp where the jumble of wires is around, it connects to the midsection of another street lamp, which then heads over the top of the punks here, where we find an E bracket. This E bracket does actually connect into this building via that awning, this building, and it even goes over to another E bracket, which connects to another E bracket, which connects to this building, and that's where this little chain ends. So while this area is kind of technically hooked up with wires, all of these buildings are connected, except for this one, which doesn't actually have a connection to anything. It has two E brackets mounted to it, but it doesn't actually have any wire directly leading into it. But otherwise, this building, and the building over there does actually have power, along with that building in the far distance there. These things all technically have got a connection into it, and therefore theoretically could be powered if these wires were connected into something. But unfortunately, this is once again another closed circuit loop. And running all the way down this road, it doesn't get any better here at Garrett Grant's recording studio in one of the far edges of the map, where we can find one telegraph pole, a second telegraph pole with a bundle of wires around it, leading through to a third telegraph pole, which has also once again got the bundle of wires around it. So this is just a stretch of wires doing nothing. And this telegraph pole connects onto a fourth one in the chain, which promptly drops into nothingness. There is absolutely nothing going on here. So yeah, while it looks like a fun little stretch of connections, it unfortunately is once again not connected actually onto anything. And if you're thinking, well, maybe it's because there's knocked over telegraph poles that would complete the connection, no, that is not the case. Because as we look down here, there is absolutely no telegraph poles knocked over on the ground, nor is there any sorts of wooden stumps indicating where a telegraph pole might have been. Instead, all we get are street lamps, which, as we know, cannot bring the electricity over because there is no insulators for them. So, unfortunately, this is once again a closed-off section of just 4 telegraph poles. And on the map, here's what it looks like down this little stretch of road, and indeed, if I bring up the whole rest of Shantytown, as you can see, it is an absolute mess of just random E brackets, random telegraph poles, and random streetlights all connected together and not powered because none of them are actually connecting to each other. So the next area I'm going to take you guys down is this main canal, which runs down the centre of the Moresby slums here. And the reason I'm taking you down here is because we can find some rather interesting looking electrical wiring happening in the form of, well, we have got these sorts of Y-shaped connections of wires which run from a building here into a wall-mounted light, which then splits off once again into one wall-mounted light over there and another one over here, and this happens twice in a short session. As you can see, here's another example of that, running from a building into this wall-mounted light, which runs up here, but unfortunately it doesn't actually run into a light, it runs into an electrical box, which we can just about see silhouetted there in the horrible rainy cloud that has taken over Moresby in this instance. So yeah, it runs into this electrical box, and this is actually something that we will see a lot of just here on the canal side, where a lot of these wiring connections will actually connect into one of these electrical boxes of some description. I'm not sure exactly what purpose this is serving, just sort of mounted out here with nothing else happening to it, but we can at least find it rather common running down the canal, and this final wire connects into this wall-mounted light. Running down the connection here, down the sort of chicane of the canal, we can see once again another electrical box which is connected to that light. It's also running into an E bracket. We have got this wall-mounted light which connects directly into this wall-mounted light. You thought I was going to say the tree. Not in this case. There will be some more tree connections, by the way, in case you were missing out on them. But yeah, this one at least does connect to something other than the tree. It connects directly onto this light. And we can follow this wiring chain. It runs into this E-bracket, which runs into this building. It also runs into this E-bracket, which then runs directly over into this E-bracket across the way. Unfortunately, all of these connections are actually connecting into different levels of insulators. These are not actually technically this wire goes into this bottom insulator and it terminates there, because there is no physical way for the wire, the electricity, to get from this bottom insulator to this top insulator where this wire is then leaving. So technically this doesn't actually link to anything. But this set of wires runs into this E-bracket, which has got quite a few things happening to it. As you can see, it's running into a light, it's running into another light over here, it's running into another E-bracket, and it's also running all the way over here into this building. And as we come over here, this E-bracket unfortunately isn't connecting to the E-bracket across the way that you can see there. Instead, it is only connecting into this wall-mounted light, and then that wall-mounted light chains into this one on this shop, which then terminates. It was going so well, kind of, because just over here we can see another E-bracket, and this E-bracket connects to this building, and it also connects to this building, and it doesn't connect to anything else. And this is a section leading into quarantine, which has got its own E-brackets and its own problems. As you can see, there is a whole load of mess of wires, and there is another one of those wall-mounted electrical boxes, which I have marked on the map. And if I bring up the map here and we have a look down the canal area, yeah, it's kind of a mess of, once again, E-brackets, wires, and electrical boxes running all the way down the canal. And it's interesting because this is one of the few places that wires actually go into one of these electrical boxes. They don't seem to be used much anywhere else other than down the canal. I'm not sure why they decided to do that, but decide that they did. Now, you would think that this area, with this massive tall structure, which is known as the wastewater plant, you would think that this place has got quite a few electrical wires running into it, because it is, well, the wastewater plant, where all of the city's sewage is sort of transported around and presumably treated. Unfortunately, that is not the case. All that we can find here is a collection of telegraph poles, which are kind of hidden around these trees. We've got this connection right here, which leads into, which is this telegraph pole, which is actually kind of, I guess, part of this wooden shack. And this connection runs all the way into this telegraph pole, which runs down into this metal shack, which is where it terminates. And if we head back up following the lines here, we can find another telegraph pole, which connects into another telegraph pole, which connects into this telegraph pole, which is where it terminates. There is, however, technically another telegraph pole located somewhere over here, which is, there you go, which leads us in a connection over to the Moresby gas station. Unfortunately, yeah, this telegraph pole does not actually connect properly to anything. The wires come over here and they connect to this tree, so tree connection, hooray! Anyone missing out on the tree connections? There's a fresh one for you. But yeah, it doesn't actually connect up properly, and this is all the wiring that you're going to find in the wastewater plant area, which is these 4 or 5 telegraph poles, and that's all you're going to get. Unfortunately, the wastewater plant is not very well connected with the rest of Moresby's tentative electrical grid, shall we call it. The wastewater plant, however, is nothing when we look at the pump station. The pump station is where all of the fresh water for Moresby gets pumped around the area, and it's how it gets distributed to the various residences and businesses in the area, including the church where we started, St. Christopher's Church as it's properly known. And this area is, yeah, kind of a mess. Starting off, we've got a telegraph pole out here in the front area. This telegraph pole connects to this telegraph pole by running into, well, we could charitably say it connects into one of those bottom rung insulators. This telegraph pole connects directly over here, not to another telegraph pole, instead it runs directly into a street light. Yes, that's correct, a street light. And this street light then runs into this telegraph pole, where it does actually connect up to a set of insulators. Unfortunately, none of these other wires want to, apart from this bottom one, which runs into this telegraph pole, which runs into this telegraph pole. And from this telegraph pole, around the midsection, it runs directly back into the telegraph pole that it just came from. Yep, you heard me right, it doesn't actually go anywhere else, it just sort of connects directly into the base of this telegraph pole. And running across the way, this telegraph pole connects via 2 points. It connects via the middle and via the top insulators, connects into this telegraph pole on the corner, which then has a chain of telegraph poles connecting both via the midsection and via the top. It connects all the way along, down into this telegraph pole, where it connects into this collection of electrical structures attached to the side of the back workshop of the pump station, which is where this electrical line terminates. If we follow it back, there is actually a connection leading onto the roof of the pump station, and if we follow it back, this jumble of wires around the midsection of this telegraph pole actually runs directly all the way back to this main central telegraph pole, which is where everything seems to end up connecting to. And that is the entire closed system of the telegraph poles, of the, well, electrical system, let's call it, right here at the pump station. It is an entirely closed system, and if we bring it up on the map, as you can see, this is what it looks like. It's kind of a jumble, kind of a mess, and it's kind of doesn't connect to anywhere else in Moresby. And it's not even like this is any sort of electrical hub. You're probably wondering by now, A, where is the nearest power station for the city of Moresby, where they are getting their power, and B, where is some sort of electrical substation, where this power is taken from the high voltage lines and transformed into the low voltage lines, which is what all of these wires that we've currently been looking at would be running on. And the answer to both of those is they don't exist. Nowhere in the City of Moresby map, nor in any of the sub-maps, such as the City Hall or supermarket, not even in the background here, any of these background buildings. In none of these areas is there a substation model, nor is there a power station model. The City of Moresby is unpowered, according to what we find actually modelled here in both the playable map and the backing buildings on the outside. There is no substation, there is no power station, there is no high voltage electrical lines leading anywhere out here. As you can see in the skyline outside here, there is absolutely no hint of any sort of high voltage power lines running anywhere out of the city towards some sort of power station, in the jungle or something. There is absolutely no power coming to Moresby, which may explain why none of these electrical wires are actually connecting up to anything. In fact, just over here in the neighbouring Riverside district, we can find a telegraph pole here, which is not actually connected to anything. It has got no wiring connections happening whatsoever. It is just a forlornly standing telegraph pole. You can find various examples of these throughout Moresby. There is in fact just standing telegraph poles not connecting to anything whatsoever. Just here where Moen parks his boat, you can find a connection of four wall-mounted lights here, which are not actually connecting to anything else. This is just another row of 4 lights, entirely closed circuit. And if you're thinking, oh well, maybe maybe because the bridge was blown to try and stop the spread of infection, you might be thinking, well, maybe that's where the wiring came from. Maybe that's where the source of power is coming from. The answer to that is also no, because if you have a look here on City Bridge, there is absolutely no hint of any sort of telegraph pole or high voltage line. There is absolutely nothing happening here. You find the occasional street light, such as this one right here, and we can find the parts of the suspension bridge, the supporting wires for these standing poles. I forget the correct bridge terminology. I'm not a bridge person. But yeah, there is absolutely no street lights, electrical wires rather, running down via City Bridge. So yeah, there goes that theory, unfortunately. What we can find down here is we can find another telegraph pole though, and this one does actually go to various places. This one does actually connect to this telegraph pole, which unfortunately doesn't seem to want to extend its connection to this forlornly standing solitary one. And it connects over to this building. It doesn't actually connect into this E bracket, which is right next to it. No. It connects directly into the building wall. That was clearly a conscious decision. And it also extends all the way over here to this telegraph pole, which is where it terminates. So once again, another termination of, well, it absolutely going nowhere. So yeah, Riverside is not even better off than any of the other places that we have looked at. Now, of course, I could point out that in this road, which leads parallel to the pump station, we can find this set of wires running into these electrical boxes. However, this is nothing we haven't seen before, because they all just run directly into houses, or they lead onto things like E-brackets, which go nowhere, or in this case it leads directly to another electrical box mounted onto a house, and that is where it, terminates. And I could, of course, point out that, we can find a lot of examples of this, where these E-brackets just sort of extend down a line and then down an alleyway, all of which are not connected, and then they just sort of terminate somewhere. But that's not what we're going to be looking at here. One of the final things we're actually going to be looking at is we are going to head to the police station. So here is our friend, the police station, standing proud, I guess, with its massive tower. But we're going to turn around here and we are going to look at this electrical wiring and where it is going. Unfortunately, this wire, you may have been misled into thinking that it was actually going to connect into this traffic light. That is not the case. Instead, what it actually does is it extends over here and it connects into another tree. Hooray, another tree connection. There's about 5 different examples of this happening. They seem to just really love connecting wires randomly into trees. We're also going to be looking over here. There is a telegraph pole, as you can see here, and these top insulators connect into this building. There's also another set of wires here, which is separate to that telegraph pole, and these simply connect this building to this street light. Doesn't go anywhere else. That's the entire thing. It's just a street light into a building connection, which is very standard, I guess. And we have got yet another tree connection going on here with these 2 sets of wires, which connects into the same house, which is that one over there. There's also this connection which leads from this E bracket directly into this tree connection once again. So apparently this tree really needs a lot of power to keep it photosynthesizing, I guess. But yeah, that is kind of the last interesting bit of wiring to actually look at here in Moresby. None of it makes sense, quite frankly, and I will now give my final thoughts and opinions on, the Moresby wiring system, and I will also bring up the complete map of Moresby's electrical grid. So, as promised, here it is. Here is Moresby's complete map of the electrical grid. I will probably have to split this map into smaller chunks in order for you to see all of it, but I did go around the entire city and I did map everything out, and you will notice that there are large chunks which just have nothing on them. and that's not necessarily because I missed something, although I most certainly will have missed stuff here and there, but these large gaps of nothingness is not because I missed things, it is simply because there is nothing there. There is absolutely no infrastructure present beyond streetlights, which I said I was not going to be mapping out on the map. Yeah, there is no e-brackets, there is no wiring at all, there is no telegraph poles, there is absolutely nothing there for us to look at. So what can we tell from this? Well, we can tell that the electrical infrastructure of Moresby is far more terrifying than the zombie apocalypse itself. We can also say that Moresby's wiring system does not make a lick of sense. Absolutely none of this makes any sense. None of this is connected to anything. Furthermore, if you were to try and make sense of it and you were to try and make it work, you would have to redesign the entire map from the ground up, I'm pretty sure, in order to fix all of these issues. You would have to add in a substation or two to step down the wiring, to step down the electrical voltage. You would need to completely redesign the telegraph poles, and you would have to completely redo where they are all placed on the map and do all new collision meshes, and it would all require, just in general, an entire refit of Moresby. And the most ironic thing about this is that I will now bring up this picture, which is taken from the loading screen of Moresby. When you next play the game, just take a look at the Moresby load screen, and you will notice that there is a telegraph pole front and centre, which is properly wired. It's got a single wire going into an insulator, which connects on the directly across from it, and it runs directly into another insulator somewhere else, or it will continue on to another telegraph pole. Not to mention that there is actually a smaller transformer present on the telegraph pole in the load screen, which steps down which helps step down and step up the electricity once again. So they had actually drawn, an artist somewhere had drawn a correct utility pole, a correct telegraph pole, all properly electrical and wired up, and what they have in game is absolutely nothing like it. That's the most ironic thing about this. Which means, does this affect your gameplay in any way? Absolutely not. First and foremost, this is a game about killing zombies with a variety of fun modded weapons. It is not a game to go and get immersed in looking at the electrical infrastructure of the world. Did I expect it to turn out this way when I started on this project? Absolutely not. I wasn't expecting it to be a great depiction of an electrical system, but I certainly didn't expect it to be this bad. But it has been a very interesting journey, finding out just what the electrical system looks like of Moresby, because I've never done one of these videos before, and I've never actually had a look at any of Dead Island's telegraph poles beyond going, there's a telegraph pole, nice. There is nothing more to really say about the matter from there. So if you did like this video, do obviously give it a like and comment if you want, and subscribe if you want as well. And if you would like to see this again, then then do leave me a comment saying, if you'd like to see me do something in Riptide, maybe look at Henderson, or the flooded jungle there, or even look at the definitive edition of this game to see how it differs, and see if the definitive edition is any better in terms of its electrical placement, or if the electrical grid looks exactly the same as a one-to-one copy. So yeah, obviously this is rather longer than an Any Austin video, and obviously I do not have the same production value as Any Austin, but hopefully the stuff that I have done has been sufficient. And if you're wondering, no, I will not be looking at the road signs of Moresby or anything like that, and I can tell you for one simple reason why. That is because the road signs definitively do not follow the legal road laws of Papua New Guinea or indeed anywhere in the world. And I will bring up on screen the three, that's right, a total of 3 road signs that you can find dotted around Moresby. You have got a speed limit 25 sign, which I have been reliably informed is 25 kilometers per hour. There is also the red triangular give way sign, and there is also the red hexagonal stop sign, which is dotted around Moresby. And I am willing to guess, based on the electrical grid that we've had a look at, that the road signs are not going to be compliant with any sort of road laws anywhere in the world. They are probably not going to be placed anywhere that they are meant to be. But yeah, next time you're in Moresby, just have a look for these road signs, and you'll see that they're the only 3 road signs in the entirety of Moresby, which is quite an interesting feat, to say the least. So, with that, I will thank you all for watching. Feel free, like I say, to comment, subscribe, like, whatever you want, or indeed share the video. So yes, I will thank you all for watching, and goodbye.